to me, looking at ODD, it seems to kind of highlight one of the major problems with how we view mental health and sort of psychiatric disorders, you know? So getting back onto the sort of prevalence and the comorbidities, as I said, ADHD is super comorbid with this, but also you've got a 90% chance or a greater than 90% chance of being diagnosed with another mental illness in your lifetime if you're an adolescent or an adult with a history of ODD.
That doesn't sound surprising at all.
Right, exactly.
I would imagine that one of the reasons why somebody might have a ODD is like a traumatic or difficult upbringing, because that like I said earlier on, like if you grow up in an environment where being kind or is sort of seen as a weakness, then obviously you're going to naturally form a sort of more aggressive stance to life. And you're not going to give other people as much like leniency because that was punished in you in the past.
Yeah.
And so that's learned.
And yeah, and that's just one route to that. So yeah, you've got the trauma route, but you could also have the route of just someone that really struggles with impulse control and gets annoyed at things more easily than other people. And so then and also doesn't like being told what to do. If you have all of these if you mix all of these together in your little cauldron, you make a person with ODD probably, right?
And I imagine also that then is sort of, you're then more likely statistically to, for example, end up in jail because, and there's two aspects of or in prison, sorry, jails, awaiting sentence, prison being then, what's the word? Convicted of a crime. But the trouble with that is that the purpose of prison is sort of twofold, or at least on the surface, the suggestion of the purpose of prison is twofold. You've got the societal, justice, punish the bad people type of thing. And then you've got the kind of rehabilitation. And the rehabilitation, I don't think anybody, if somebody's done something that damaged other people or hurt other people and that isn't generally socially acceptable, I think we'd all agree that we'd like some kind of system that can help people get back on a good path that isn't damaging other people or themselves.
You dirty radical. How dare you?
Well, I'm just saying, I think we'd all agree that at least that is quite a good thing. Right? I mean, actually, no, I think you're probably right. There are genuinely people who just go, no, punish them. I'm one of the good people, so I feel good about myself if you punish the bad people.
No, once you've done something bad, there's nothing you can do except rot away in jail.
But if you've got a genuine impulse control thing, then yes, rehabilitation might be something that would be beneficial for you. But the punishment aspect of prison, I think you could at least make an argument that you don't deserve that if you don't have the same impulse control that other people do have. It's not your fault, and it's not their good character that meant they had an effective impulse control and therefore didn't do the thing you did.
But that's what people think.
But
This reminds me of the conversation that we had with Dodie way back in the episode we did with her, the one on what is it, DPDR? Yeah,
DPRD.
Yeah, DPRD, depersonalization and derealization disorder. We've got that episode in a card. You can click on it right now and watch it. Wow.
Look at that.
I actually have no idea which side it's on. It's somewhere.
I think it's over there.
But yeah, it reminds me of that conversation we had with Dodie where we spoke about who is actually at fault, like who actually deserves to go to jail, who deserves to go to prison. Because how responsible are you for your own actions? Well, we all like to think that we're responsible for our own actions. We've got free will, but then also we're beholden to the chemistry in our brain and, our upbringing and how that has impacted us. We can't all make the same choices as everyone else. For example, if you have ADHD, it is just harder for you to control those impulses. And so why is it fair that you should be beholden to the exact same rules as everyone else when everyone else has it far easier? I'm not saying that people with ADHD should be allowed to commit crimes willy-nilly, but my point is just to highlight the issues with punishment as a sort of role for prison. Prison shouldn't really be about punishment in my mind. It should all be about the rehabilitation, because ultimately, if you say it should be for punishment, then what do we gain from that as a society, other than the vindicated feeling, like the nice, good feeling of someone bad getting what's coming to them?
Theoretically, at least, we always gain the opposite thing, which is that you're trying to manufacture fear in people who haven't done the thing yet. And so, like,
just doesn't work.
But it's not just purely. I know that there is some vindictive. I feel great because this bad person was punished, and that that's very naturally in us, I think. But then also there's the kind of well, we need to make it so that. So, for example, if you speed, imagine if you speed, 1 in 10 people speeding get caught, say.
Yeah.
Right. And imagine you could put some theoretical cost on every time somebody sped, like the total damage caused by speeding, ignoring the fact that people actually die because people speed. But the total damage of like other cars, you could somehow quantify financially the effects of speeding. Well, if there are 10% of people get caught, well, then the cost of speeding needs to be if for every person who gets caught, they have to pay 10 times more than the average damage in order to rectify the fact that 90% of people don't get caught. That's an argument you could make so that the total damage is paid by the total number of people who are caught, and that disincentivizes speeding in a sort of game theoretical sort of way. Whether people actually think, what I mean is there's a solid logical theory.
I agree.
Whether it works and whether actually do people pay attention to it. There's a lot of studies that suggest that certainty of capture rather than severity of punishment is more effective at deterring people from crime.
Well, that's why the death penalty just doesn't really work, because no one's necessarily going to be scared of the death penalty if they're not scared of getting caught. Do you know what I mean? You don't need to think of the death penalty as an option. If you only got like a 1% chance of being caught, death penalty doesn't seem that bad, because that's only a 1% chance of being put in the chair.
Yeah.
You know? Like, so it really comes down to how good the police are at doing their jobs of catching criminals, which we all know how good the police are at doing their job of catching criminals. Not very good. Not very good at all.
I feel like they this is maybe getting a bit idealistic, because the complexities of running a government and running a society are really tough when you actually try to put it into practice. But I feel like there are a lot of police, and a lot of them are doing sort of silly crimes, like people possessing marijuana, although they don't do that very much anymore. But there are people like avoiding loads of tax and like stealing massive amounts of money.
Yeah.
And I feel like those are probably call me crazy, those are probably the things we should focus more on than like little stuff.
Are the people doing that white?
Oh.
Like just mostly?
Quite a lot of them, yeah.
No, then no. Let's leave them at it. Leave them at it, and we'll focus on something else, like marijuana, whatever black people are doing nowadays. You know,
what are they doing?
Well, they're doing marijuana at the same rate as white people, but being arrested at double the bloody in the US. But no, it's. I kind of want to bring back to what you were talking about there, because that model wherein 10% of people get caught, right?
Yeah.
So they pay 10 times more than they should, you know, and that sort of part of the punishment.
Yeah.
That would be fine, I guess, to some degree, if there wasn't sort of a bias in who was caught. Because realistically, that 10% isn't just 10% of all speeders. It's some specific groups of people that speed, right? Like the police don't just willy-nilly, like they don't just like close their eyes and throw a dartboard to decide, you know, which person they're going to go after, you know, which person they're going to let go. There is a lot of bias there, and we have the data to show that they over-police certain racial groups.
Even for speeding?
I'm not saying necessarily for speeding.
Right,
I'm just saying I'm using that kind of as a jumping-off point to talk about this, because if you have 10% of if you only have 10% of people being caught, how can you be sure that is, you know, a sort of accurate and fair 10% that represents the entire whole? Or, you know, how do you stop it from just making all of the sort of black people and all of the Latinos pay for crimes that everyone else is doing as well?
Because it feels almost like when you were talking about, well, how is it fair that that people, if they have an impulse control problem, like even if you take it much more extreme than ADHD, imagine you have an impulse control problem because you had brain cancer and a portion of your brain had to be removed, or you know, or you have like a condition which means you don't have impulse control. It almost feels like, actually, if you do something like, I don't know, whatever crime, and you don't have an impulse control problem, you should be actually punished more.
Yeah, right? But then this is what we were talking about back then, which is how do we know that people actually are totally fine and just committing crimes because they want to?
It's impossible.
Surely, if you're committing a crime, there is something else going on, right? There's some other factor that has led you to doing that.
Well, yeah, and if you take a sort of causal view of the universe, which is that things have causes, and sort of that the idea that we have free will to make choices is sort of all part of the illusion of the causation of the universe, well then yeah, ultimately. And that's why I think sometimes things like pathologizing actually can be, it's almost like looking at society from a top-down view and going, okay, well, you know, pathologizing to a certain extent removes some of the agency from the person, because it says everything. If you pathologize everything, then it says everything is ultimately not the fault of anybody, because you know, they were born with the genes they have and they had the childhood they have and everything. And you know, we do generally put a line somewhere and go, okay, but eventually you take some responsibility.
Yeah.
But pathologizing looks at society from a top-down view, and it's not about going, well, let's absolve everybody of all responsibility for everything, but it's going, how do we just make stuff not happen as much?
Yeah.
Even, it doesn't matter whose fault it is. It doesn't matter what the causality is. Let's just go, how do we affect the causality so that less crime happens?
Yeah.
That we all kind of do want that. And the model where we just put a bunch of random people in jail who we just happen to catch, like, that doesn't really seem to be working, because there's flipping loads of people in jail.
We still have crime. You know, like, you put more and more people in jail, and there's still tons of people out of jail doing the crimes. Probably jail is not working, or prison is not working.
And that's not to say that some form of, and we've talked about this in the past, where it's like, if somebody, whenever they're free, is grabbing an axe and running around attacking people, yes, you want to take that person away from people for a bit. Yeah. It's not to say that the function of taking somebody who's a danger to themselves or to other people and putting them in a different place where they can't access people for at least a while is a bad idea. It's a perfectly understandable idea. But the idea of going, as we've said, like, oh, you dreadful person, you think about what you've done for a very long time, like, that's very attractive to our monkey brains, but it doesn't actually seem to be doing what we want it to do.